Demos here from CHURCHx. Today I'm going to show you how to set up custom certificates that are emailed to your students when they complete your courses on CHURCHx. This is a totally optional feature, but it's something that's kind of nice to have and maybe actually important if you're using certificates for things that are qualifications for doing ministry or other things in your organizations. So we're going to go over to CHURCHx first, and then so I'm editing on. Let me turn editing off. You don't need it right now. First thing we're going to do is make a new course. So you could use the link in the links for managers for managed courses, or you could go to my courses at the top here. It doesn't matter. Either way, you're eventually going to get an option to add a new course. So here we go. So I'm going to give it a title like, because it's for certificates, yippee. Okay, cool. Short name, which is required. Certs. Let's call it certs for you. Okay. Most of these options are irrelevant for the purposes of what we're talking about today, but one that is very relevant is completion tracking. Completion tracking is the magic that makes all this work. So obviously we need that to be on, yes. Whether or not students are shown their activity completion is an aesthetic choice that you can make and a design choice. It depends. If you want a smoother look with less stuff on the screen, less clutter, then yeah, you can have that set to no. If you want students to understand their completion relative to, status relative to activities and things, then say yes. Up to you. Okay, in this case I'll put yes, that's fine. So save and display, it's going to pop me into a new course shell, which is blank at the moment, except for the announcements forum, which is a default on all all our courses, but it can be removed if you don't want it. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is set some completion criteria just to get us kind of going. And I could set up a lot of different kinds of activity completion. And in fact, just to give kind of an example, I think I will go ahead and create just a random activity under this topic. I'm going to put like let's say I'm going to put I'll put a page. How about that? Okay. I love pages. Pages are extremely useful. So I'm just going to kind of put some random text in there, some random text in the description, random stuff in the content. Okay, and then for activity completion for this one, I almost never let students self-complete their activity. I almost always use some kind of automation. So either I don't do activity completion or I do it automatically. So in this case, we're going to do it automatically. And for pages, the only the only completion criteria available is students must view the page. So if the student views this page that we're creating, that'll mark them as having completed that activity. If it was another type of activity, like say, a quiz, then obviously they'd have to you could set it so they had to score a certain amount on the quiz. If it was an assignment, like you were asking people to submit something that only the instructors can see, like a sermon doc or something, you could set that as a criteria for that, for completion. Another candy example that some people have used on our platform is if you set up a forum, you can set an activity completion criteria that they have to do a certain number of original posts and perhaps a certain number of replies. So you can say that for this completion to happen, you have to post an original discussion and you have to reply to 2 other people. Those are all options. I don't mean to confuse you. I'm just saying that there are a lot of options for how you determine whether somebody has completed an activity, and that's just talking about activities. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to say, yeah, sure, the student must view it. Okay, so save and return to course. That's fine, and so that will be in there now. Oops, where is it? Oh yeah, it's right here. So that's on, and you see this little view right here. It says view. That is what we were talking about before about the student view, the students being able to see completion criteria. So if this was a forum and they had to do a certain number of posts, that would be here instead. But that's what shows them what they have to do within that activity to earn completion. As I said, you don't have to turn on activity completion on every single activity. In fact, I wouldn't recommend that, but you can select what you think is important for to determine completion. Or you could do none of that. You could just do something like I'm going to show you next, which is that if I hit more and I go to course completion, then it takes me to the criteria for what counts as course completion. First thing to decide is whether you want all of the criteria you're going to designate here to be met or just any of the conditions being met. So all conditions or any conditions. So in this case, we're going to set it at, let's just say that we'll set it at all conditions for now, so I can demonstrate a little bit more about how completions work. But okay, so all conditions are met. Okay, so now we could take a look at the different activities, and we only have one right now, a page. But if we had others, they'd all be listed. That were tracking completion, they'd all be listed here. And so you could select some of these and say that for them to have completed the course, they would have had to do these activities. Again, that's optional, up to you. You could make a condition the completion of another course on the platform. You could make a condition the date. So like maybe there'll be no course completions until after the final talk has happened, or some delay after the course has happened. You can use the date condition. Enrollment duration, you can say that they have to be enrolled for a certain number of days in your thing. This might be helpful for like networks. Like if you were doing a network to discuss issues around climate change, and you wanted to have people marked as complete for that network, you could say that they have to be a part of that network for 30 days or 60 days or something like that. Enrollment, don't worry about that one, I don't think. Course grade, I mean, yes, if you're grading, you can set a criteria for that if you want. Manual self completion, again, I don't know. I mean, there are circumstances where maybe it makes sense to have people mark themselves as having completed the course. We could do that if you like. Condition manual completion. This is a popular one that you're going to want to probably use in many cases. What this means is that somebody with one of these roles, either a non-editing teacher, or manager, can be set to indicate course completion as one of the criteria of course completion. So we're going to say teacher in this case. Okay. So now it's going to say, okay, all these conditions, all of these people have to sign off. No, we're just going to say any. So if I had clicked both manager and teacher, in this configuration with any selected role, either one of them could mark a student as having completed, but you can set it so that all of them had to approve. It's up to you. Okay, got that? So far what we've done here is we've set a criteria, and we've said if all these conditions are met, that they've viewed the page and they've been marked complete by an instructor, then they get course completion. You cannot directly just simply do course completion unless you were to have not have this page thing clicked. Like if I take this off, then the only condition for completing this course is the teacher marking them complete. Okay, but if I turn this on, now we have two completion criteria. They have to view the page and be marked complete. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to save changes. So now we have a course, and that course has a completion criteria that has to be met for students to be marked complete. So the next stage is to add our certificate for completion. So that could be in any of these areas, but just for our purposes, I'll put it here, under general at the top. So I clicked the add activity link, and then I'm going to choose from my activity picker, oops, I can't quite see it, the custom certificate plugin, activity, I should say. Okay, so I'm going to say something like, graduation certificate. Okay. And of course you could give it a little bit more of a description, and I'd say something like click here to see your certificate, which will also be emailed to you. And I'm going to say go ahead and display that on the course page. You can also, if you I'll get into a second. So under options, I wouldn't mess with this one. It just means that when they are clicking on their certificate inside CHURCHx, they'll see it pop up in their browser window. The alternative is that it would actually force them to download it onto their computer. Email students, almost certainly yes. Email teachers, up to you if you want teachers to get a copy. Email others, maybe there's people in the organization you want to get a copy of the certificates, like somebody who's keeping track of who has attended Safe Church training, something like that. Okay, up to you. All right, allow anyone to verify. The default is yes. I would keep it at yes. That means that you can share a link in the certificate that people outside the organization can use to verify that somebody has successfully completed the course. So they don't have to have a CHURCHx account either. They can just validate the certificate with the link. Required minutes in the course, probably wouldn't worry about that. Protections, that's to, if you're worried about people making copies of your certificate and like fake, creating fraudulent copies, you could activate some of those features, but no one worry about that. Language preference, yeah, you could force language on people if you want. Okay. Common module settings, This one, if you're going for a more simple looking page and you don't want a lot of stuff on it, you could hide this activity from students when they're doing their view of the course page, so they won't even see it there. It'll just be hidden in the background, but I would probably just keep it on show on course page. All right, so there's other things, group mode, forced language, stuff like that, you don't need to worry about unless you want to enable some more advanced features around those issues. And if you do, just ask me and I can explain how those work. Restrict access. This is one of the critical things you want to set. So this is what determines whether students get a certificate or not, like under what conditions. So obviously we want to set some, and we want to do it before people start joining the course, and that's really important. Set these restrictions before people enter the course. So right now there's no restrictions, but we're going to add some. You could give people a certificate just for having done a single activity completion, or because a date has passed or something, and you could just give them a certificate. And it doesn't even have to be a course completion certificate. It could be any kind of certificate. But what we care about is coupling course completion with getting one of these certificates, right? So that's the main case. So, all right, so we have course completed as one of the restrictions. So if we put on there, then course completed, you have to choose yes or no. I mean, obviously we're going to pick yes. Okay, so that's it. This one, activity completion, do not mess with, except maybe to set it at do not indicate. That's to whether this activity itself is marked complete, and that would only make sense if for some reason you wanted students to look at their certificate inside the course and you wanted to enforce that, but don't worry about that. So do not indicate activity completion is what you want that set at. Okay. All right, and that's it. So then I'm going to save and return to course, and you see it's here now, and you see it's got a little locked icon. Because for students, they would not be able to access this certificate activity. They'll see it, but they can't get into it until they've actually completed the entire course. All right, so if I go into it, though, as a manager or instructor or whatever, I see I've got some options. Right now, there are no recipients, obviously, of this, and so there's nothing to display. That's fine. So we're going to start by creating a new certificate. So what you want to do is you go to Edit Certificate. Okay, we've already given the certificate a name, so don't worry about that. It has a default height, width, all that. I would highly recommend that before you mess with all this, you actually create a template for your organization. And I've already created one for United Learning and one for the Episcopal Church. If you want help creating one, let me know and I'll help you create one. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but I'll show you how to do it. But again, set it up as a template. Don't mess with it after that. So I'll show you what the United Learning one looks like that I made. So I just put it in there and then I hit load, and it's going to ask me to confirm, and then boom. And now what it's done is that edit certificate thing now has a bunch of properties in it, like it changed the height, the width, the left margin, right margin, and then these elements that appear on the page. And you can basically, with this, when you build a certificate in this system, what you do is you add elements to it, such as a background image, such as the student name, which is generated dynamically, such as the date, again, dynamically. You can put a piece of text, you can put a banner, a logo, all that stuff. And it's a little tedious to add these, which is why it's important to do the template method. But if you want to see what it looks like, you can hit this little reposition elements link at the bottom here, and it'll give you a little preview. And I can turn off editing mode now. It'll give you a little preview of what your certificate looks like, and okay, that makes sense. And even within this, I could move elements around just by dragging them and dropping them, and then when you're finished, you can hit save and continue or save and close. But anyway, so now you have your certificate, and now you also have a restriction setting on it. Remember, we created a restriction for this. So I'm going to save changes. Very important always, and we're good. So at this point now, if I go back to the main course page, what we have is we have completion criteria for the course, and we have a certificate which will trigger for students when they have completed the course. Got me? Okay, so let's put a student in and demonstrate. So I'm going to go to participants, I'm going to just enroll somebody. I mean, obviously most of you would be using the catalog system to enroll students, but this is for demonstration purposes, so I'm going to put student A. Okay, and I'm going to make him a student and enroll. So this is an alter ego of mine, and he's in there now as a student. We see. Cool. Okay. Now go back to the course. Now, at any time, you can check the completion status of your students, participants, by going to reports, and then going to your course, oh, there we go, to the course completion thing. Sorry. So what's funny is you'll notice right now that these boxes are blocked off for me, and I cannot, for example, do the approval for completion because it's got that little grayed out. It's like grayed out right now, and that's because I don't have the right role. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to participants, and I'm going to add myself now as a teacher, like my actual account. So there, and then I'm going to say, you know, IMC at TUCC. There you go. Okay. And then I'm going to set the role as teacher, enroll. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to reports, and I'm going to go back to course completion. And now you see I can actually approve or disapprove this item. Okay. And we'll get back to what that looks like in a second. So this student A, has not completed this activity. You can manually, as an instructor, mark students as having completed an activity, such as viewing that page, in case they haven't, or they did, and for whatever reason. So you go to report. The way you do that is you go to reports, and you go to activity completion. So not course completion, but activity completion. And you'll see now it's got student A, and I can mark him as, are you sure you want, and it's going to give me a warning. Are you sure you want to override the completion status? And I'm going to say yes. Okay, so now that student A has been marked as having completed that activity. But as I said, you don't have to use activity level completion. You could just do a single completion criteria, which is that the instructor marks them as having complete. It's up to you. All right, so I'm going to go back to reports and course completion. So now when I look at student A, you see he's marked as complete on this activity. And you can see that the teacher has not marked him complete, and so he does not have course completion yet. So to demonstrate how this works, like let's say that you wanted to mark them complete after they attended a Zoom session, so you're just manually marking them as having completed the Zoom session, no problem. Right here is where you would do that. You just go into course completion, you hit teacher like this, and then now they are complete. Okay, so we're going to wait a minute here, and what happens is there is what's called a cron job. There's like a regular computer function that calculates whether a course is considered complete or not, because remember, in a lot of cases that would be completely automatic and would not require this manual input at all. So that's all done automatically in the background. So if I reload this course again, see now when I reload the page, it's saying that student A has completed the activity. Perfect. All right, so at this point we have a student who has completed their criteria for completing the course. And in this case, that criteria had two elements. One was having viewed a page, the other was having been approved for course completion by the instructor. But you could cut that down to just one if you wanted to, or you could make them completely automated. It's up to you. But let's say that we have those two criteria, they're complete. So the next thing is that you there's a process in the background that runs like every 5 minutes that checks to see whether there's any students in this course who have gotten completion who do not yet have a certificate issued to them. So if I click on this, you're going to see there's a recipient, and it is my student account. Now, if you were to have gone too quickly into this, then you might not have seen anybody there. Don't panic. Like I said, that cron job happens every 5 minutes or so, so it takes a couple of minutes before they get their certificate. So if this was more students in this course, we would see them listed below here. So yeah, it's kind of okay. We would see them listed below here as well, but since there was only the one, we just see the one. If a student was viewing this, they wouldn't see the other students. They would just see a view certificate option, like what it says up here, view certificate, and it would just show them their certificate like that. In terms of emails that they get at this point, if I switch over to my Gmail tab, I'll show you. One is that they get an email that looks like this, and they would have just gotten one. It's just I was testing it, so it's got multiple stacked together. But you just get a congratulations, you completed the course. That is something that they get by the CHURCHx system, no matter what course it is. If it has criteria to complete and they've done it, then they get a little email like that. No big deal. But what we care about is this one. This is the one that has the actual certificate in it. So dear student A, attaches your certificate for completing this course. Again, there's multiple ones here just because I was testing this earlier, and so I had, multiple ones that I did. But anyway, and they're all the same. If I open it up, it just looks like this, and they can print it and they can frame it. And you see that this text is a little bit off. You could edit the template and kind of move that text a little bit. But what that is that's the link people go to verify that the certificate is real and still valid. So they would go to that link, and then they could also use this, and then they use this code here to check the validity of the certificate, or they could just scan it with their phone and it would take them directly to that link as well. So that is the basics. So at this point, you have successfully set up a criteria for course completion, and you have successfully triggered course completion for a student, and that has triggered automatically them getting a certificate which you have pre-configured. Got it? One question though that may come up is, what happens if we we completed the wrong student, if we made a mistake? Well, first of all, as I said, you do have a couple minutes grace before the certificate is actually issued to the student. So you do often have a chance to undo their course completion, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. You have that option. You can delete the certificate here, just like this. Okay, you sure? Yep. Okay, cool. They don't have a certificate anymore. The problem is that you did actually email it to them already, and there's not much I can do about that. If you're going to sort of set up a system where people get emailed their certificate when they're marked as complete, then when they're complete, they get their certificate automatically. It's done. But you can invalidate it in our system. So that's for the certificate, but what about the course completion? So if you go back to the report, oh, sorry, I need to be back on the main course page. If I go to the reports for course completion, you'll notice that I can't do anything. I'm clicking on this and nothing's happening. That's because once you've marked a student as being approved for completion, that's it. Unless you want to reset the course completion criteria. So the way you do that is you go to where you initially set your criteria for completion, which is course completion right here under the More menu. Okay. And you see this big button here, unlock completion settings and delete user completion data. Now, when you click this, it'll actually undo it for completion for all the students in the course. Which is fine. But this looks fine. Okay, so now if I go back to the completion report, you'll see that this is now unapproved. Okay, and their status is now not complete, and that would be the same for all the students on here. Now, here's something really important and interesting. At this point, it will not delete any of those completion certificates that were on that previous page I showed you. So I already deleted it, otherwise I could show it to you now. That would still be there for any of those students. But what this does do is it allows you to reset for the student that you accidentally marked. So you could not mark them as complete, and you could instead just go through real quick and mark everybody else as being complete, and then they would be re-completed for the entire course, but they would not be reissued a certificate by email. They would get one of those little emails that just says course completed, congrats, but they wouldn't get the big email with the actual certificate attached to it and all that sort of stuff. I know that's not quite ideal. If there is a desire to make it so they don't even get that little message of recompletion, I could sort of look at trying to eliminate that, but it's a little tricky. I think it's easier just do it this way. They're not going to get they're not going to get reissued a certificate. You've deleted that one student, and then so once that student has completed the required activity, then you can mark them as complete, like we did before. And again, this is going to take a minute for it to complete. So we're going to check it. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so it's now that student A is marked complete again. So if I go back to the participants, back to the course menu, and I go to graduation certificate. Remember, it's going to take a minute. Oh, no, it got it already. Okay, so now we have the student as having been, marked complete for this course. So if I go over here, you see that they got yet another certificate, right? So now another certificate's been issued for that student. See, like 2 minutes ago. That's because remember, we took it back the first time, and then now we're reissuing it, so they're getting another certificate by email. Okay, so that in a nutshell is how you can manage your course completion criteria, and how you can complete students and then see them get an automatic certificate, and if you need to uncomplete a student, how you can do that as well. As I said, they will not get a second certificate unless you delete the certificate, on this menu you're looking at right here. If you leave it alone, then they won't get reissued a certificate. I hope that makes sense to you all. I want to thank you for using CHURCHx for your educational needs. And if you have any questions about how this works, please feel free to message me. I know it's a little complicated. The thing that I'll say is also that, as I said, that once you set it up for one course, I think you should probably just kind of reuse it as much as you need to, and kind of take that as a pattern that you use. So thank you, and good teaching out there.